The burning trail. The valley was burning under a sun that had no mercy. Aaron Cole wiped blood from his knuckles and stared at the two men blocking his path, men who'd already hurt one woman and wouldn't hesitate to hurt another. Behind him, Rachel Moore lay broken in the dirt, her daughter somewhere out there alone, waiting for a mother who might never come home. The rifle in the taller man's hand wasn't pointed down anymore. Aaron's own gun was back at the house. The air smelled like scorched grass and gun oil. Someone was going to bleed today. Maybe all of them. If you want to see how Aaron survives this standoff and whether Rachel makes it home to her daughter, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these frontier stories travel. The heat came up from the ground like something alive. Aaron Cole had seen hot summers before, 23 of them since he'd taken over the ranch from his father, but this one felt different, meaner. The kind of heat that made horses irritable and turned good water brackish by midday. The kind that baked the moisture out of everything until the whole valley felt like kindling waiting for a match. He was replacing a rotted board on the barn door when he heard the voice. Small, steady, too calm for a child standing alone in country this empty. "Mister!" Aaron straightened, hammer still in hand, and turned toward the fence line. A little girl stood there, maybe 6 years old, wearing a faded calico dress that had seen better seasons. Dust coated her bare arms and freckled face. Her dark hair hung in two braids that had started to come loose. She wasn't crying, wasn't calling for help, just standing there with her hands folded in front of her, like she was waiting for someone to notice her at church. That calm worried him more than tears would have. Aaron set the hammer down and walked over, boots crunching through grass that had gone brittle. Up close, he could see the sunburn across her nose and the way her lips had started to crack from dehydration. "You lost, little one?" "No, sir. I live over the ridge, past the tall pines." Aaron knew the place. Small cabin, maybe 10 acres of rocky soil. He'd seen smoke from the chimney off and on for the past year, but had never ridden over to introduce himself. Out here, people kept their distance until they had reason not to. "That's a long walk. Your folks know you're out here?" The girl looked down at her hands. "It's just me and Mama went out yesterday morning looking for our goat. She said she'd be back before supper." Aaron felt something cold settle in his chest despite the heat. "And she didn't come back?" "No, sir." "You been alone since yesterday?" "Yes, sir. I waited like she told me. But it got dark and she still wasn't home. And this morning I got scared, so I walked here because I saw your chimney smoke last winter and Mama said if there's smoke, there's people." Smart woman, teaching her daughter that. Aaron crouched down so he was eye level with the girl. "What's your name?" "Ivy." "Ivy Moore." "I'm Aaron. You did the right thing coming here, Ivy." He glanced past her toward the ridge, where heat shimmered above the tree line. "Your mama, she go out on foot or on a horse?" "We don't have a horse, just the goat." "And the chickens?" "No horse." That meant Rachel Moore, he assumed that was the mother's name, had been on foot in this heat for over 24 hours. If she'd gotten hurt, gotten lost, or run into trouble, she could be in serious danger. "You eat anything today?" Ivy shook her head. "Come on then, let's get you some water and something to eat. Then we'll go find your mama." He offered his hand and Ivy took it without hesitation. Her fingers were small and hot and left dusty prints on his palm. He led her toward the house, a low-slung structure built from local timber and river stone. It wasn't much. 2 rooms, a root cellar, a porch that sagged on one side, but it was cooler inside than out. Aaron sat Ivy at the table and brought her a cup of water from the well. She drank it in 4 long swallows, then looked at him expectantly. "Slow down or you'll make yourself sick," he said gently, refilling the cup. "Little sips this time." While she drank, he cut thick slices of bread and smeared them with butter and honey. Ivy ate like she hadn't seen food in days, which she probably hadn't, not real food anyway. Aaron watched her and tried to think. A woman alone with a child, living on bad land. No horse, no husband that Ivy had mentioned. That was a hard life even in good times. In heat like this, it could turn deadly fast. "Ivy, your mama ever mention anyone bothering her? Anyone coming around the cabin?" The girl looked up, honey on her chin. "Sometimes men come. Mama doesn't like them." "What kind of men?" "The kind with loud voices. They make Mama upset. She sends me to hide in the root cellar when they come." Aaron felt his jaw tighten. He'd heard stories, plenty of them, about men who preyed on women living alone. Widows, mostly, or women whose husbands had died or run off. They'd show up claiming debts, offering protection that wasn't asked for, making threats until they got what they wanted. These men ever hurt your mama? Ivy's face went carefully blank in a way that made Aaron's hands curl into fists. That was answer enough. He stood and went to the corner where he kept his rifle. He checked the load, grabbed extra ammunition, filled a canteen with water, and pulled on a wide-brimmed hat that had faded to the color of old leather. All right, Ivy, you're going to stay here where it's cool. I'm going to find your mama and bring her home. I want to come. I know you do, but it's too hot and too far. You're already worn out from walking here. The best thing you can do for your mama right now is rest and stay safe. Can you do that for me? Ivy's lower lip trembled, but she nodded. Aaron knelt beside her chair. I'm going to leave this door unlocked. If anyone comes, anyone at all that isn't me or your mama, you run out the back and hide in the tall grass behind the barn. Don't come out until you hear me call your name 3 times. Understand? Yes, sir. Good girl. He stood, settled the rifle across his shoulders, and headed for the door. He was halfway across the porch when Ivy's voice stopped him. Mr. Aaron? He turned. Mama's real good at being brave. But sometimes when those men come, I hear her crying after they leave. Aaron nodded slowly. I'll bring her home, Ivy. I promise. He didn't make promises lightly. Out here, a man's word was all he had. But looking at that little girl sitting alone at his table, he knew he'd walk through fire before he came back without her mother. The ridge was a mile east, and Aaron covered the ground at a steady pace despite the heat. The sun hammered down with a weight that made breathing feel like work. Grasshoppers exploded from the dry grass with every step. In the distance, a hawk circled on thermals, searching for prey that had sense enough to stay underground. Aaron had always been good at reading land. His father had taught him to notice things: broken branches, disturbed earth, the way animals moved when something was wrong. Now he used those skills to follow Ivy's path backward, looking for any sign of where Rachel Moore might have gone. At the base of the ridge, he found the cabin. It was smaller than he'd imagined, built hastily from unseasoned lumber that had already started to warp. The roof was patched with mismatched shingles. A vegetable garden struggled in a plot that didn't get enough sun. Chickens scratched in the dirt near a leaning coop. The front door stood open. Aaron approached slowly, rifle ready, eyes scanning for movement. Mrs. Moore, it's Aaron Cole from over the ridge. Your daughter Ivy's at my place. I'm here to help. No answer. He stepped inside. The cabin was a single room with a sleeping loft accessible by ladder. Simple furniture, a cold stove, wildflowers in a jar on the windowsill, their petals already wilting in the heat. Everything neat and clean despite the poverty. The mark of a woman trying to make a home out of almost nothing. On the table, he found a bowl of beans that had gone bad, and a note in careful handwriting. Ivy, stay inside. Back soon. Love, Mama. Aaron folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. Outside, he circled the cabin looking for tracks. The ground was hard-packed and gave up its secrets reluctantly, but he found what he needed, a set of boot prints, small, heading northwest toward the tree line. A woman's stride, moving fast, maybe chasing something. The goat. She'd gone after the damn goat. He followed the trail into the trees where the air was marginally cooler and thick with the smell of pine resin. The tracks became easier to read in the softer soil beneath the canopy. Rachel had been moving quickly, not watching her step, focused on something ahead. 100 yards in, Aaron found where she'd stopped. The prints showed she'd turned in a circle, searching. Then they headed uphill toward an area of broken ground where erosion had created a maze of gullies and exposed roots. Bad country to be running through, easy to lose your footing, easy to get hurt. He climbed carefully, rifle slung across his back, using roots and rocks for handholds. The temperature dropped slightly in the shade, but his shirt was soaked through with sweat. His hat kept the worst of the sun off his face but did nothing for the oppressive weight of the heat. Halfway up the slope, he found the glove. It was small, made of worn cotton, lying in a patch of disturbed dirt where someone had scrambled and slipped. Aaron picked it up and looked uphill. The tracks continued, but they were erratic now, stumbling, unbalanced. Rachel! His voice echoed through the trees. Rachel Moore! Nothing. Just the dry whisper of wind through dead needles. He pushed on, fighting the slope and the heat and the growing certainty that he was going to find her hurt. The gully narrowed into a ravine choked with deadfall and poison oak. He had to move sideways in places, shoving through brush that grabbed at his clothes. Then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it over his own breathing. A moan, weak, pained. Aaron scrambled toward it, abandoning caution. The ravine opened into a small clearing where a lightning-struck pine had fallen years ago, and there, half hidden by the trunk, was Rachel Moore. She was younger than he'd expected, late 20s, maybe 30, dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, face pale beneath the sunburn. She lay on her side with her left leg bent at an angle that made Aaron's stomach turn. Her skirt was torn. Scratches covered her arms. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Rachel. He was beside her in seconds, checking for a pulse. It was there, thready and fast. Can you hear me? Her eyes fluttered open. They were brown, unfocused with pain and dehydration. Ivy, she whispered. She's safe. At my place. I'm Aaron Cole. I'm going to get you home. Can't. Leg. He looked at the injury. The leg was broken. No question. Probably when she'd slipped on the slope. She must have tried to crawl for help but couldn't make it far. How long had she been lying here? A day? A day and a half in this heat? I'm going to give you some water. Then we'll figure out how to move you. Easy now. He lifted her head gently and brought the canteen to her lips. She drank desperately, water running down her chin. He pulled it away before she could make herself sick. More, she gasped. In a minute, let that settle first. He was already assessing the situation. The leg needed to be stabilized before he could move her, and he didn't have anything for a splint. He'd have to use what he could find, branches, his belt, strips of cloth from her torn skirt. He was reaching for his knife when he heard voices. Male voices. Coming up from below. Rachel's eyes went wide with terror. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. No, she breathed. Not them. Please. Not them. Aaron's blood went cold. He recognized the fear in her eyes, the kind that came from experience, not imagination. This wasn't the first time these men had found her vulnerable. He moved quickly, positioning himself between Rachel and the sound of approaching footsteps. His rifle came off his shoulder smooth and familiar. He checked the load by touch, eyes never leaving the direction of the voices. Two men emerged from the trees. They were the kind Aaron had seen in every rough town and mining camp from here to California. Hard faces, harder eyes. One was tall and lean with a knife scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw. The other was broader, younger, with a cocky set to his shoulders that said he'd never met consequences he couldn't shoot his way out of. The tall one carried a rifle. The younger one had a pistol on his hip, hand resting on the grip casual-like, the way a man does when he's used to people backing down. They stopped when they saw Aaron. Well now, the tall one said slowly. Didn't expect company. Aaron said nothing. Just stood there with his rifle held loose across his chest, not pointing at anyone, but not pointing away either. The younger one grinned. That's private property you're standing on, friend. Coal land. And you don't look like coal to me. I am Cole, Aaron said quietly. Aaron Cole. And this woman is hurt. I'm taking her home. That's so. The tall one tilted his head, studying Aaron like a man might study a horse he was thinking of buying. See, thing is, Mrs. Moore here owes us. Her late husband, he borrowed money before he passed. She's been real stubborn about paying it back. That's a lie, Rachel whispered from behind Aaron. The tall one's face hardened. You calling me a liar, Rachel? My husband never borrowed a cent from you. You want money for protection we never asked for. You've been threatening me for months. Threatening? The younger one laughed. We've been nothing but neighborly, checking in, making sure you and your girl are safe. Can't help it if you're too proud to accept help. Aaron's finger moved to the trigger guard. Not a threat yet. Just ready. Whether she owes you or not, it can wait. Right now she needs a doctor, so I'm going to pick her up and carry her down this mountain. You can follow if you want, make your case to the sheriff. Or you can get out of my way and we'll all go home breathing. The two men exchanged a look. Something passed between them, a decision being made without words. The tall one's rifle started to come up. Aaron's was faster. Don't. His voice was cold iron. I've got no quarrel with you, but I'm not leaving her here, so you need to decide right now if this is worth dying over. For a long moment, nobody moved. The forest held its breath. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then the tall one lowered his rifle, slightly. This ain't over, Cole. Mrs. Moore has debts. We aim to collect. Take it up with the law. Law's 2 days' ride from here. Lot can happen in 2 days. Then you better ride fast. The younger one spat in the dirt. You're making a mistake, friend. Wouldn't be my first. The men backed away slowly, weapons still visible, eyes never leaving Aaron. They disappeared into the trees the way they'd come. But Aaron didn't relax. Men like that didn't give up easy. They'd be back, probably with friends, probably angry. He gave it a full minute before he lowered his rifle and turned back to Rachel. She was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank me when we're home. Right now I need to set this leg enough to move you." It was brutal work. Aaron found 2 straight branches and used his belt and strips from her petticoat to create a makeshift splint. Rachel bit down on a leather strap he gave her and whimpered but didn't scream. Tough woman. Had to be, to survive out here alone. When the leg was as stable as he could make it, he lifted her as gently as possible. She was lighter than expected. Too light. The kind of thin that came from not enough food over too much time. She buried her face against his shoulder, breathing hard through the pain. "Hold on to me. We've got a ways to go." The descent was hell. Every step jarred Rachel's broken leg. Aaron tried to move smooth, tried to avoid the worst of the rough ground, but there was no good path. Sweat poured down his face, stung his eyes, his shoulders burned. The rifle across his back dug into his spine. The heat wrapped around them like a wool blanket soaked in hot water. Halfway down, Rachel passed out. Maybe that was a mercy. Aaron kept moving, one foot in front of the other, breathing measured, eyes on the ground ahead. Behind them, somewhere in the trees, he heard the snap of breaking branches. The men were following, keeping their distance but making sure he knew they were there. He pushed harder. By the time he reached level ground, his legs were shaking. His vision swam. The cabin was still another half-mile, his place another mile beyond that. Rachel needed more help than he could give her out here. She needed shelter, water, proper bandages. She needed someone who knew how to set bones correctly. He needed to get her to Ivy. The girl had already been through enough. Aaron adjusted his grip and started across the open ground. No cover here. Nothing but dry grass and exposed earth. If the men wanted to make a move, this was where they'd do it. The first gunshot kicked up dirt 10 feet to his left. Aaron didn't stop, didn't run, just kept walking at the same steady pace, Rachel unconscious in his arms. The second shot was closer. "Put her down, Cole." The tall one's voice carried across the distance. "This is your last warning." Aaron kept walking. The third shot went wide deliberately, a warning, not a miss. And then he heard something that made his heart jump. A child's voice, screaming, "Mama! Mama!" Ivy. She'd left the house. She was running across the open ground toward them, barefoot, her dress flying behind her, face red with tears and terror. "No, no, no, no! Ivy, stop!" Aaron's voice cracked with urgency. "Get back!" But she didn't stop. She ran straight toward them, toward her mother, toward the men with guns who'd been threatening them for months. The younger one raised his pistol, and Aaron Cole, a man who'd spent 23 years avoiding violence, who'd walked away from fights and swallowed his pride and kept his head down, felt something break open inside him. He laid Rachel down as gently as speed allowed and charged. The rifle came up smooth. His first shot took the pistol out of the younger man's hand, literally shot it clean away in an explosion of metal and blood. The man screamed and fell backward. The tall one swung his rifle around. Aaron was already moving, closing the distance, using the terrain, using every hunting trick his father had taught him. The second shot went over his shoulder. The third hit the ground where he'd been a heartbeat before. Then he was on them. The rifle stock caught the tall one across the jaw with a crack like breaking wood. The man went down hard. Aaron didn't stop, couldn't stop. He kicked the fallen rifle away, spun, caught the younger one trying to draw a knife with his good hand. Aaron's fist connected with his temple. Once. Twice. The man dropped. Both men lay in the dirt, groaning, bleeding, no longer a threat. Aaron stood over them, breathing hard, knuckles split, blood, his and theirs, dripping into the dust. Behind him, small footsteps. He turned. Ivy had reached her mother. She knelt beside Rachel, touching her face, calling her name in a voice too young to know such fear. Aaron walked over on legs that barely held him. He dropped to his knees beside them. "She's alive," he said quietly. "She's going to be all right." Ivy looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much. Promise? And Aaron, who didn't make promises lightly, who knew better than to make guarantees about things he couldn't control, found himself nodding. I promise. Rachel's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, confused. Then they found Ivy. Baby, she whispered. Mama. Ivy grabbed her hand. Mama, you came back. Always, baby, always. Aaron looked back at the two men. They were stirring, trying to get up. He could shoot them, could claim self-defense. Nobody would question it, but he'd never killed a man, and he wasn't going to start now if he could help it. Can you stand? He asked the tall one. The man spat blood. Go to hell. You're going to pick up your friend, and you're going to walk. You're going to keep walking until you're off my land, off this valley, and if I ever see either of you again, I won't aim for your hand, understand? The younger one clutched his mangled fingers, whimpering. You broke my hand. You shot. You pulled a gun on a child. I showed more mercy than you deserve. Now get out of my sight. They left, stumbling, bleeding, but they left. Aaron waited until they disappeared over the ridge. Then he gathered Rachel into his arms again and started for home. Ivy walked beside him, one hand on her mother's shoulder, the other clutching a fistful of Aaron's shirt. She didn't let go the whole way back. The house felt smaller with 3 people in it. Aaron carried Rachel through the door and laid her on his bed, the only real bed in the place. Ivy climbed up beside her mother immediately, fitting herself into the curve of Rachel's side like she belonged there, like she'd spent too many nights afraid of losing that warmth. I need to look at that leg properly, Aaron said. Ivy, can you bring me the basin from the kitchen and fill it with water from the well? The girl slid off the bed reluctantly, casting worried glances back at her mother. Rachel's hand found his wrist. Her grip was weak but urgent. Those men, gone. For now. They'll come back. I know. Her eyes searched his face. You shouldn't have gotten involved. They're dangerous. They've already... She stopped, jaw tight, and Aaron saw something dark flicker across her expression. Old fear, old pain. Already what? It doesn't matter. What matters is Ivy. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. You can't know that. Her voice cracked. My husband died 2 years ago. Accident with the wagon. I've been alone since then, trying to make that place work, trying to keep food on the table. Those men showed up 6 months ago saying Thomas owed them money from a poker game. I told them it was a lie. Thomas never gambled, never borrowed, but they kept coming back, started making threats, started touching things that weren't theirs to touch. Aaron's hands curled into fists before he could stop them. Did they hurt you? Rachel looked away. Not the way you're thinking, but there's more than one way to hurt someone. They killed my chickens, burned my vegetable garden, told me they'd take Ivy if I didn't pay. I've been giving them everything I can scrape together just to keep them away from her. That ends now. You don't understand what you're up against. The tall one, his name's Cyrus Wade. The younger one's his brother, Emmett. Their uncle owns half the businesses in Silver Creek. The law won't touch them. Then the law's in the wrong business. Ivy returned with the basin, water sloshing over the sides. Aaron took it and set it on the small table beside the bed. He rolled up his sleeves and began cleaning the dirt and blood from Rachel's leg as gently as he could. She bit her lip but didn't cry out. This splint's temporary, he said. Leg needs to be set properly. There's a doctor in Silver Creek. I can't afford a doctor. I can. I won't take charity. Aaron looked up from his work. Her chin was set, eyes fierce despite the pain. Pride. The kind that kept people alive out here but also got them killed. It's not charity, it's neighboring. Someone needs help, you help them. That's how this works. I'll pay you back. We'll talk about that when you're healed. He finished cleaning the wound and wrapped it in strips of clean cloth. The leg would hold for now, but Rachel needed proper medical attention soon. Tomorrow he'd have to ride to Silver Creek and bring the doctor back, whether she liked it or not. You should sleep, he said. Both of you. Where will you be? Outside, keeping watch. Rachel's hand found his again. Aaron, thank you. For Ivy. For coming after me. He nodded once and stood. Ivy was already half asleep against her mother's shoulder, eyes drooping despite her efforts to stay awake. Aaron stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind him, leaving it open enough to hear if they called. The sun had dropped toward the horizon, painting the valley in shades of amber and rust. The heat had broken slightly, but the air still felt heavy, oppressive, like a storm that wouldn't quite break. He sat down in the old chair his father had built, rifle across his knees, and watched the ridge. They'd come back. Men like Cyrus and Emmett Wade didn't walk away from humiliation. They'd come back angry, probably with help, and when they did, Aaron needed to be ready. He'd lived alone for 3 years now. His father had died of pneumonia the winter Aaron turned 20. His mother had followed 6 months later, just seemed to lose the will to keep going without her husband. No siblings, no wife. There'd been a girl once, but she'd married a merchant from Denver and moved away before Aaron worked up the courage to ask her to stay. He'd gotten used to the quiet, used to his own company, used to days that followed the same pattern. Work the land, tend the animals, fix what broke, prepare for winter. Simple, solitary, safe. Now he had a woman and child sleeping in his bed, 2 dangerous men with a grudge, and a decision to make about how far he was willing to go to protect people who weren't his responsibility. Except they felt like his responsibility now. He'd made a promise to Ivy. He'd looked that little girl in the eye and told her he'd bring her mother home. That meant something. It had to mean something, or what was the point of any of this? The night came on slow. Stars emerged one by one until the sky was full of them. Aaron didn't move from his chair. He watched the darkness and listened to the sounds of the valley, crickets, distant coyotes, the wind moving through dry grass. Somewhere past midnight, the door creaked open. Rachel stood there, leaning heavily on the doorframe, face pale in the moonlight. "You should sleep." "So should you." "Can't. Leg hurts too much." Aaron stood and helped her to the chair. She lowered herself with a sharp intake of breath, bad legs stretched out stiff in front of her. "There's laudanum in the cabinet," Aaron said. "Small brown bottle." "I don't want to be insensible. Not with Ivy here, not with those men. I'll keep watch." "You need rest." Rachel shook her head. "I've been taking care of myself and Ivy for 2 years. I'm not good at letting someone else do the watching." I noticed. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Thomas used to say I was stubborn as a mule in mud." He wasn't wrong. They sat in silence for a while. The night pressed close around them, dark and warm and alive with small sounds. "Why'd you come after me?" Rachel asked quietly. "You didn't know me. Didn't owe me anything. Your daughter was standing at my fence looking for help. What was I supposed to do?" "Most men would have sent her home, told her it wasn't their problem." "I'm not most men." "No." Rachel looked at him thoughtfully. "No, you're not." Another silence. This one felt different, heavier. "Where's Ivy's father buried?" Aaron asked. "North side of our property, under the big oak. I couldn't afford a stone, so I carved his name into the tree. Ivy puts wildflowers there sometimes." "What happened to him? You said accident." Rachel's hands twisted in her lap. "Wagon lost a wheel coming down the mountain pass. Thomas was thrown. Horse dragged the wagon right over him. He lived for 3 days after, long enough to tell me he was sorry, long enough to make me promise I'd take care of Ivy, long enough to hurt." "I'm sorry." "Me too." She wiped her eyes roughly. "He wasn't perfect. Drank more than he should have. Had a temper sometimes. But he loved Ivy. And he tried. That counts for something." "It does." "After he died, I thought about leaving, going back east where I have family. But we didn't have money for passage, and I kept thinking maybe I could make it work. The land's not good, but it's ours. And Ivy, she loves it here, loves the space and the quiet. She'd hate the city." "She's a tough kid. She has to be." Rachel's voice went hard. "No choice in that. World doesn't care if you're ready or not. It comes at you anyway." Aaron knew that truth down to his bones. "She's lucky to have you." "Am I, though? Lucky would be a mother who could keep her safe, who could provide, who didn't have to send her daughter to beg strangers for help." "You didn't send her. She came on her own." "That's not weakness, Rachel. That's raising a smart kid who knows when to ask for help." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. "You're a kind man, Aaron Cole." "I'm a practical man. Kindness doesn't keep you alive out here." "Maybe, but it keeps you human." The comment sat between them, uncomfortable and true. Movement caught Aaron's eye, something shifting at the edge of the property. He was on his feet with the rifle before Rachel could ask what was wrong. "Inside. Now." "What now, Rachel?" She moved, awkward and pained, back through the door. Aaron followed, pulling it shut behind them and dropping the bar into place. He moved to the window and peered out through the gap in the shutters. 3 riders, coming up the road slow and purposeful. "Blow out the lamp," he said quietly. Rachel did. The room plunged into darkness. Aaron's eyes adjusted. He could see the riders more clearly now. They stopped about 50 yards out, just at the edge of rifle range. Smart. They'd learned. One of them called out. Not Cyrus Wade, someone older, with a voice that carried authority. "Aaron Cole, I'm Marshal Vance from Silver Creek. I need to speak with you." Aaron didn't move. "What about?" "I've got 2 men here claiming you shot Emmett Wade without provocation. Assaulted them both. They want justice." Rachel moved up beside Aaron, Ivy clutched in her arms. The girl was awake now, eyes wide and frightened. "Those men drew on me first," Aaron called back. "I was defending myself and Mrs. Moore here. She's hurt bad, broken leg. They were threatening her child. I've got witnesses." "The child's not a reliable witness, and Mrs. Moore's word against theirs? That won't hold in court, Cole, not with the Wade family's connections." "Then your court's broken." A pause, then, "Let me come in, talk this through, no weapons, just conversation." Aaron considered. A marshal was different from local law, federal jurisdiction, harder to buy, but not impossible. "Alone," he said. "Your men stay mounted and visible." Agreed. The marshal dismounted and walked forward, hands raised and empty. Aaron waited until he was at the porch before opening the door a crack. Marshal Vance was older, maybe 50, with gray threading through dark hair and a weathered face that had seen too many ugly things. His eyes were sharp and assessing. "Mrs. Moore," he said, nodding to Rachel. "Heard you were hurt. You need a doctor." "I'll manage." "That's not what I asked." "Yes, I need a doctor. My leg's broken." Vance looked at Aaron. "You the one who found her?" "Her daughter came to me, said her mother went missing. I followed the trail, found Rachel hurt in the ravine. The Wade brothers showed up while I was trying to get her stabilized. Started making threats, said she owed them money." "Does she?" "No," Rachel said firmly. "My husband never borrowed from them. They've been extorting me for months, killed my livestock, burned my crops. Today they pulled guns on us. On my daughter." Vance's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." "Truth and proof are different things, ma'am. The Wades say you owe them legitimate debt. They say Cole here attacked them unprovoked when they came to collect." "That's a damn lie," Aaron said. "Maybe. But here's how this looks to me. I've got 2 injured men who want you arrested for assault. I've got a woman with a broken leg who needs medical attention. And I've got a situation that's going to get uglier if we don't handle it smart." "What are you suggesting?" Vance leaned against the porch rail. "I'm suggesting you come into Silver Creek tomorrow. Voluntarily. We'll get Mrs. Moore to the doctor, get statements from everyone involved, and let the law sort it out proper. And if I don't come voluntarily, then I come back with a warrant and enough men to make sure you do. That gets messy. People get hurt. The child sees things she shouldn't have to see." Rachel's arms tightened around Ivy. Aaron looked at the marshal, trying to read him. Was he honest? Bought? Somewhere in between? Hard to tell in the dark with lives hanging in the balance. "I'll come," Aaron said, "but Rachel and Ivy stay here. They're under my protection." "Can't guarantee that. The Wades want Mrs. Moore to testify." "She'll testify when she's healed and can travel, not before." Vance studied him. "You're putting yourself in a bad position, Cole. The Wades have influence, money, friends in high places." "I don't care." "You should. Men like that don't forgive. They don't forget." "Neither do I." Something flickered in Vance's eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. The look of one stubborn man seeing himself in another. "All right. Tomorrow morning, you ride in with me. We'll get this settled legal and proper. But Cole, if you run, if you try anything stupid, I will hunt you down. That's not a threat. That's a promise." "I'll be there." Vance nodded and turned to leave. He was halfway to his horse when Rachel called out, "Marshal!" He stopped. "Those men hurt me. Threatened my child. Took everything I had. I'm not lying about that." Vance looked back at her, and for the first time Aaron saw something soft in his expression. Something almost like pity. "I believe you, ma'am. But believing and proving are 2 different things. and in this territory, proof tends to favor whoever's got the deepest pockets. He mounted up and rode off with his men, leaving Aaron and Rachel standing in the darkness. Ivy broke the silence. Are they going to take you away? Aaron knelt down so he was eye level with her. I'm going to town tomorrow to talk to the marshal. That's all. Just talking. But what if they don't believe you? Then I'll make them believe. How? Good question. Aaron didn't have a good answer. Rachel set Ivy down gently. Go back to bed, baby. Everything's going to be all right. Ivy looked between them, not convinced, but she obeyed. When she was gone, Rachel turned to Aaron. You shouldn't go. They'll arrest you. The Wades will make sure of it. If I don't go, Vance comes back with a warrant. That puts you and Ivy in danger. We can leave, tonight. Take what we can carry and just go. Go where? You can barely walk. We'd make it maybe 5 miles before your leg gave out. Then what? Rachel's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I brought this on you. You didn't bring anything. I made a choice. Now I'm seeing it through. But, Rachel, he took her shoulders gently. Listen to me. I'm going to town tomorrow. I'm going to tell them what happened, and I'm going to come back. You and Ivy will be here when I do. That's how this works. You can't know that. No. But I can choose to believe it. She searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have given her some comfort because she nodded slowly. They went back inside. Rachel returned to the bed with Ivy. Aaron took up position in the chair again, rifle across his knees, watching the darkness. Dawn came cold and blue. Aaron hadn't slept. He'd spent the night watching shadows and thinking about what came next. He made coffee over the fire, strong and bitter. Rachel woke to the smell and limped out, supporting herself against the wall. You should eat something, she said. Not hungry. Aaron, I need you to promise me something. He turned to face her. If I don't come back by sundown, you take Ivy and you go. There's a trading post 15 miles south. Man named Morrison runs it. Tell him I sent you. He'll help. I won't leave you. You will, for Ivy. You'll go and you'll keep her safe. That's what matters. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. All right, I promise. Good. He gathered what he needed, rifle, ammunition, canteen, a small amount of money hidden in the coffee tin. When he was ready, he stood in the doorway looking back at them. Rachel stood tall despite the pain, one hand on Ivy's shoulder. The girl stared at him with those 2 old eyes, understanding more than she should. Be safe, Rachel said. Aaron nodded and walked out into the morning. The ride to Silver Creek took 3 hours. The town materialized from the dust and heat like something conjured. A main street lined with false front buildings, a saloon, a general store, a church with a crooked steeple. People moved in the shade, avoiding the sun. Marshal Vance was waiting outside the jailhouse. Cyrus and Emmett Wade stood with him. Emmett's hand was wrapped in bloody bandages. Cyrus's jaw was purple with bruising. They both smiled when they saw Aaron. That smile told him everything he needed to know about how this was going to go. Aaron dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and visible. The rifle stayed in its scabbard on the saddle. His hands hung loose at his sides, but every muscle in his body was coiled tight, ready. Cyrus Wade spat tobacco juice into the dirt, eyes never leaving Aaron's face. Well, didn't think you'd actually show. I gave my word. Your word. Emmett laughed, cradling his ruined hand. Your word don't mean shit when you shoot a man. Marshal Vance held up a hand. That's enough. Cole, you're here voluntarily to give a statement about yesterday's incident. You understand you're not under arrest at this time? I understand. Good. Let's go inside and talk this through. The jailhouse was small and spare. A desk, 2 cells in the back, a gun rack on the wall. It smelled like old coffee and older sweat. Aaron took the chair Vance pointed to while the Wade brothers leaned against the wall, watching him like cats watching a mouse hole. Vance pulled out a ledger and a pencil. Start from the beginning. Why were you on that ridge yesterday? Aaron told it straight. Ivy showing up at his fence, finding Rachel injured, the Wade brothers appearing with weapons drawn, their threats, the confrontation that followed. He didn't embellish, didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. When he finished, Cyrus pushed off from the wall. That's the prettiest lie I ever heard. Want to know what really happened, Marshal? I'm listening. My brother and I were riding our usual patrol. We run security for several properties in the valley, including the Moore place. We heard someone calling for help up in the ravine. When we got there, we found Cole standing over Mrs. Moore with a rifle. He told us to get lost. When we tried to explain we were there to help, he opened fire, shot my brother's hand clean off, damn near killed me. That's not what happened, Aaron said quietly. You calling me a liar? I'm saying you're not telling the truth. Emmett slammed his good hand on the desk. He attacked us. Unprovoked. We got witnesses. What witnesses? Aaron cut in. Who else was there? The brothers exchanged a look. Cyrus recovered first. Our uncle. He was riding with us, saw the whole thing. Marshal Vance made a note. I'll need to speak with him. He's at the hotel. I'll fetch him. Cyrus headed for the door, then paused and looked back at Aaron. You made a big mistake, Cole. Attacking a Wade. Our family owns half this territory. You're going to hang for this. The door slammed behind him. Vance set his pencil down and looked at Aaron. You got anyone who can vouch for your character? Anyone who can testify you're not the kind to shoot a man without cause? Aaron thought about it. He'd lived quiet and kept to himself. His neighbors knew him to nod at, maybe trade work with during harvest, but none of them knew him well enough to stake their reputation on his word. 3 years alone had made him nearly invisible. No, he said. No one. That's a problem. I'm telling the truth. I believe you, but belief doesn't hold up in court. The Wades have money, influence, and now they've got a witness. You've got a broken woman and a child. Judge isn't going to like those odds. Aaron leaned forward. Then what am I supposed to do? Tell me where Rachel Moore is. Let me bring her in to give her statement while it's fresh. If she backs your story, she can barely walk. Her leg's broken in 2 places. Moving her now could cripple her permanently. Then we've got nothing to counter the Wade testimony. The door opened again. Cyrus returned with an older man in an expensive suit, tailored, Eastern-made, the kind that cost more than most people earned in a year. He had silver hair, cold blue eyes, and the bearing of someone used to getting exactly what he wanted. Marshal Vance. The man's voice was smooth as oiled leather. I'm Thomas Wade. I understand there's been some confusion about yesterday's events. Mr. Wade, your nephews claim you witnessed the altercation. I did indeed. I was riding with Cyrus and Emmett on our regular security rounds when we heard someone calling for help. We found this man, he gestured dismissively at Aaron, standing over Mrs. Moore with a weapon. When my nephews attempted to assist, he became violent. Shot Emmett's hand, struck Cyrus. It was unprovoked and brutal. That's a lie, Aaron said. Thomas Wade's expression didn't change. I understand you're upset, Mr. Cole, but lying won't help your situation. I saw what I saw. You weren't there. Are you calling me a liar? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Be very careful with your next words, young man. I have considerable influence in this territory. One word from me and you'll spend the next 10 years breaking rocks in a territorial prison. Marshal Vance stood. Mr. Wade, I appreciate your testimony, but I need to conduct this investigation properly. That means getting all sides of the story. Of course. I simply wanted to make sure the truth was heard. Mrs. Moore is a troubled woman, Marshal. Lost her husband tragically. Been struggling ever since. I've tried to help her. Offered her employment, financial assistance. She's refused every kindness, and now she's dragged this unfortunate man into her web of desperation. Aaron's hands curled into fists. Rachel Moore is one of the strongest people I've ever met. Your nephews have been terrorizing her for months, extorting money, making threats. That's why they were there yesterday, to hurt her, to threaten her child. Thomas Wade sighed like a man dealing with a particularly dim student. You've been deceived, Mr. Cole. It's understandable. A pretty face, a sad story, men have fallen for less. But the facts remain. Mrs. Moore owes my nephews a substantial debt. They were merely attempting to collect what they're legally owed. Show me the contract. I beg your pardon? If there's a legitimate debt, show me the paperwork. The contract her husband signed. The loan documents. Silence. Thomas Wade's eyes hardened to chips of ice. The debt was settled by handshake. Her husband's word against my nephews. Unfortunately, dead men can't testify. How convenient. Marshal, are you going to allow this man to insult my family? Vance looked tired. Cole, that's enough. It's not enough. None of this is enough. They're lying, and you know it. What I know is I've got 3 witnesses saying one thing and you saying another. Unless you can produce Mrs. Moore to testify or find someone else who can corroborate your version of events, my hands are tied. Aaron stood so fast his chair scraped back. So that's it? The Wades buy justice and the rest of us just accept it? Watch yourself, Vance warned. Or what? You'll arrest me for telling the truth? For defending a woman and child? For doing what you should have done months ago? Thomas Wade smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Marshal, I think we're done here. Clearly, Mr. Cole is agitated and unreasonable. Perhaps some time in a cell will help him reflect on his situation. I haven't committed a crime. You shot my nephew. In self-defense. That's for a judge to decide. Marshal, I'm filing formal charges against Aaron Cole for assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, and interfering with legal debt collection. I trust you'll hold him until the circuit judge arrives next month. Vance rubbed his face. Mr. Wade, I can't or won't. The steel underneath the smooth voice showed through. I wonder what the territorial governor would think about a marshal who refuses to enforce the law, particularly when that marshal's salary comes from taxes my businesses pay. It wasn't a subtle threat. Didn't need to be. Aaron saw it happen. The moment Vance's spine bent. The moment practical reality overcame whatever sense of justice he might have had. The older man's shoulders sagged slightly. Aaron Cole, I'm placing you under arrest for assault pending investigation and trial. You have the right to... Aaron didn't wait to hear the rest. He spun and drove his shoulder into Emmett Wade, sending the injured man crashing into his brother. Before anyone could react, he was through the door and running. Shouts erupted behind him. A gunshot cracked, the bullet punching through the wall somewhere to his left. Aaron didn't slow down. He hit the street at a dead run, boots hammering dirt, heading for his horse. More shots. People screaming. Someone grabbed at his arm and Aaron shoved them away without looking. His horse was 20 feet ahead. 15. 10. He reached the animal, yanked the reins free, swung into the saddle. The rifle came out of the scabbard smooth and familiar. He fired once over the heads of the crowd. Not to hit anyone, just to make them think twice about being brave. Then he dug his heels in and the horse exploded forward. They thundered down the main street, scattering people like chickens. More gunfire erupted from the jailhouse, but Aaron was already moving, weaving, making himself a difficult target. A bullet whined past his ear. Another kicked up dirt beside the horse's hooves. Then he was past the last building, past the edge of town, flying across open ground with nothing but sky ahead and fury behind. He rode hard for an hour before slowing to let the horse breathe. His mind raced faster than the animal's hooves. He'd just made everything worse, running from the marshal, assaulting the Wade brothers again. Now he wasn't just facing charges. He was a fugitive. But what choice did he have? Sit in that cell for a month while the Wades made sure Rachel and Ivy disappeared? While they bought the judge and the jury and made certain Aaron hung regardless of the truth? No. Better to run. Better to fight. He changed direction, heading not for home, but for the high country where the Wade brothers wouldn't follow easily. He needed time to think. Needed to figure out how to turn this around. The sun climbed toward noon. Heat pressed down like a physical weight. Aaron found a creek, let the horse drink, refilled his canteen. His hands were shaking. From exertion or fear, he couldn't tell. What had he done? He thought about Rachel and Ivy back at his place, waiting for him to return. Thought about the promise he'd made. Thought about how he'd just broken it by running instead of seeing this through. But seeing it through meant hanging, meant leaving them alone and unprotected, meant the Wades winning. Aaron splashed water on his face and tried to think clearly. He needed help, real help, someone with authority the Wades couldn't buy, someone who could force an honest investigation. The territorial governor? Too far away, too insulated, probably already in Thomas Wade's pocket anyway. The army? This wasn't military jurisdiction. Another marshal? Why would they believe him when Vance hadn't? He was still turning options over in his mind when he heard hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. Aaron was mounted and moving before they came into view. He pushed the horse hard again, heading for rougher terrain where numbers wouldn't matter as much. Behind him, the pursuit closed the distance. They were good riders, and they knew this country. Aaron cut left into a narrow canyon where the walls rose steep on both sides. It was a risk. If they trapped him in here, he was finished, but it was also his best chance of losing them in the maze of switchbacks and dead ends. The canyon twisted like a snake. Aaron followed it deeper, taking turns by instinct more than knowledge. The walls grew higher, blocking out the sun, turning midday into twilight. A shout echoed from behind. They'd found his trail. Aaron urged the horse faster. The animal was tiring, sides heaving, foam at the corners of its mouth. He couldn't push much longer without killing it. The canyon opened into a small valley ringed by steep slopes. There was a way out on the far side, a narrow gap between rock faces. Aaron made for it. He was halfway across when riders appeared at that gap, cutting off his escape. Aaron yanked the reins, spinning the horse. More riders emerged from the canyon behind him. He was surrounded. 6 men, all armed, none of them wearing badges. Cyrus Wade rode forward, his bruised face split in a savage grin. Thought you could run, Cole? We own this territory. Every trail, every pass, every hiding spot. You're on Wade land now. Aaron brought his rifle up. I'm riding out of here. Anyone tries to stop me dies. Big words for a man who's outnumbered 6-1. I only need to kill you. The rest will think twice. Cyrus's grin faded. You do that, and you're dead before you can work the bolt. Maybe, but you'll be dead too. That a trade you want to make? For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the wind whistling through the rocks and the labored breathing of Aaron's exhausted horse. Then a new voice cut through the tension. That's far enough, all of you. Aaron's head snapped around. A rider emerged from behind a boulder outcropping. A woman, older, maybe 60, sitting straight-backed on a gray mare. She wore men's clothing, a wide-brimmed hat, and carried a rifle like someone who knew how to use it. This is private business, Mrs. Chen, Cyrus said. Ride on. I don't think I will. Looks to me like 6 armed men chasing one. That's not business. That's murder waiting to happen. Cole's a wanted man. Assaulted my brother. Shot him. I heard. I also heard your version of events is about as reliable as a 3-legged horse. She looked at Aaron. You Aaron Cole? Yes, ma'am. Thought so. Your father was a good man. Helped me and mine more than once when we needed it. Figure I owe his son the same courtesy. Cyrus's hand moved toward his gun. You're making a mistake, old woman. The rifle in her hands shifted slightly. It was pointing at Cyrus now, casual and steady. I've made plenty of mistakes in 62 years, boy. Crossing a Wade ain't one I'm worried about. Now you and your boys are going to turn around and ride back to town. Aaron here is coming with me. The hell he is. The hell he isn't. You want to try stopping us? Go ahead. But I guarantee you won't like how it ends. I may be old, but I can still put a bullet through a man's eye at 100 yards. And unlike you, I don't miss. She said it with such absolute certainty that even Cyrus hesitated. Aaron seized the moment. I'm riding out with her. Mrs. Chen backed her horse toward Aaron, rifle still trained on the Wade riders. Come on, boy. Let's not linger. Aaron fell in beside her, and they rode toward the gap together. The Wade men parted reluctantly, hands on weapons but not drawing. Cyrus's face was purple with rage, but he didn't give the order to shoot. Not yet. They cleared the gap and picked up speed, putting distance between themselves and the valley. Mrs. Chen led them through a series of twisting passages Aaron had never seen before, following paths only someone who'd lived here for decades would know. After 20 minutes, she slowed and pulled into a small cave hollowed out of the canyon wall. We'll rest here. They won't find us unless they get lucky. Aaron dismounted, legs shaky with adrenaline crash. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. Your father pulled my husband out of a flash flood when everyone else had given him up for dead, sat with him for 3 days while he recovered, never asked for payment, never mentioned it again. That's the kind of man he was. She studied Aaron with sharp, dark eyes. You got that same look about you, the kind that does right even when it costs. I don't feel very righteous at the moment. Righteousness is easy when it's convenient, takes real character when it's hard. She pulled down a canteen and took a long drink. Now tell me what really happened with the Wades. Aaron told her everything. Rachel, Ivy, the confrontation, the trial that was never going to be fair. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting, her weathered face unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. The Wades have been squeezing people for years, she finally said. My family included. We pay their protection fees same as everyone else. It's either that or wake up to find your barn burned, your cattle scattered. The law won't touch them, can't touch them. Too much money, too many connections. So what do I do? You fight, but not the way you've been fighting. You can't outgun them, can't outrun them, can't beat them in their own courts. Then how? Mrs. Chen smiled grimly. You expose them, make their crimes so public, so undeniable that even their bought judges can't ignore it. You get the truth out where people can see it. How am I supposed to do that? The territorial newspaper. They've got offices in 3 towns, including Silver Creek. Editor's name is Marcus Webb. He's honest, doesn't bow to the Wades. You get him your story, get Rachel Moore's testimony documented, get others who've been hurt by the Wades to speak up. That's how you win. Rachel can't travel, and no one else will risk speaking against them. Then you make them. You show them they're not alone, that there's enough of us to stand together. She leaned forward. Most people are good, Aaron. They want to do right, but they're scared. Give them courage. Show them it's possible to win. That's how you beat men like Thomas Wade. Aaron thought about it. It was risky. Required trusting people he didn't know. Required Rachel to put herself and Ivy in danger by speaking publicly. But it was better than running forever. Where do I find this Marcus Webb? He won't be in Silver Creek. Too dangerous now. But he's got a printing press in Ashford, about 40 miles north. Small town, no Wade influence yet. You go there, tell him Margaret Chen sent you, he'll listen. That's a 2-day ride. Then you better get started. Aaron stood and offered his hand. Margaret took it in a grip that was still strong despite her years. Why are you helping me? He asked. Really? Because I'm tired, she said simply. Tired of watching good people get crushed. Tired of paying tribute to men who produce nothing but fear. Tired of living in a place where justice depends on how much gold you can pile on a scale. Your father was one of the few who stood up to it. Died before he could make a difference, but he tried. Figure it's time his son finished what he started. I'm not my father. No, you're not. You're something better. You're angry. And anger, properly directed, can move mountains. She gave him supplies, food, ammunition, a fresh horse to replace his exhausted one. Drew him a map to Ashford with landmarks he could follow even at night. What about Rachel and Ivy? Aaron asked. If I leave, the Wades will go after them. I'll send my sons to watch your place. Anyone tries to hurt those women will answer to me. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Now go. Every minute you delay is a minute the Wades spend tightening their grip. Aaron rode out as the sun started its descent toward the western peaks. Behind him, Margaret Chen stood watching until he disappeared from sight. The journey north was hard and lonely. Aaron rode through the night, slept in fits during the heat of day, pushed on when darkness fell again. He passed through country he didn't know, following Margaret's map, trusting her knowledge. On the second day, exhausted and sunburned, he rode into Ashford. It was smaller than Silver Creek, barely more than a crossroads with pretensions. But it had a main street, a few businesses, and most importantly, a building with Ashford Chronicle painted across the front in fading letters. Aaron tied his horse and pushed through the door. The office smelled like ink and paper and old coffee. A man in shirt sleeves and ink-stained fingers looked up from a desk covered in typeset letters. We're closed, he said without real conviction. Are you Marcus Webb? Depends who's asking. My name is Aaron Cole. Margaret Chen sent me. I've got a story you need to hear. Webb's expression sharpened. He set down the letters carefully and gestured to a chair. All right, Mr. Cole, I'm listening. And Aaron, for the 3rd time in 2 days, told the truth about what happened on that burning ridge when he chose to help a woman and child instead of looking the other way. This time, someone believed him. Marcus Webb listened without interrupting, his pen moving steadily across paper as Aaron talked. When the story was finished, Webb set down his pen and leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. That's quite an accusation you're making against one of the wealthiest families in the territory. It's not an accusation, it's what happened. To you, perhaps. But I've been in this business 20 years, Mr. Cole. I've learned the difference between truth and what one man believes is truth. Webb stood and moved to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. However, you're not the first person to tell me stories about the Wades. He dropped the folder on the desk between them. Inside were dozens of handwritten statements, newspaper clippings, official complaints that had gone nowhere. Aaron picked up the top sheet. A farmer named Hutchins claiming the Wades had burned his crops after he refused to sell his land. Below that, A widow named Sarah Brennan saying Cyrus Wade had threatened her children when she couldn't pay protection money. Statement after statement, all telling variations of the same story. The Wades took what they wanted, hurt anyone who resisted, and the law looked the other way. Why haven't you published this? Webb's expression turned bitter. I tried. 3 years ago, ran a story about Wade business practices, included testimony from 5 families. Know what happened? Thomas Wade bought the paper, fired me, burned every copy of that edition he could find. I spent 6 months unemployed before I could scrape together enough money to start this place. He gestured around the shabby office. And even here, 40 miles from Silver Creek, I have to be careful. Wade's influence reaches far. So you're afraid to print the truth. I'm cautious about getting myself killed for nothing. There's a difference. Webb sat down again, studying Aaron with sharp eyes. But you've given me something those other statements didn't have. You're not just another victim claiming abuse. You're a fugitive. A wanted man. That makes you news regardless of whether the Wades like it or not. How does that help? Because I can print your story under the guise of reporting on your escape. Wanted man claims Wade persecution is a headline that sells papers. Once it's out there, once people are reading it, the other victims see they're not alone. Maybe they find courage to speak up. Maybe enough pressure builds that even the territorial governor has to notice. Aaron felt a flicker of hope. You'll publish it? I'll consider it, but I need more than your word. I need Rachel Moore's testimony. I need her to go on record saying the Wades threatened her, extorted her, that everything you're claiming is true. Can you get me that? She's 40 miles south with a broken leg. Then you better ride fast, because every day you delay gives the Wades more time to bury this story, and you along with it. Webb pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I'll give you a letter of introduction. Explains who I am, what I'm trying to do. If Mrs. Moore trusts you enough to testify, have her sign a statement. Be specific. Dates, amounts, exact words if she can remember them. The more detail, the harder it is to dismiss as fantasy. Aaron took the letter Webb offered. What if she won't do it? What if she's too afraid? Then you're finished. I won't print accusations without corroboration. I can't afford to. Webb's voice softened slightly. But from what you've told me about this woman, she doesn't sound like the type who stays quiet when her child's in danger. Give her the chance to fight back. My guess is she'll take it. Aaron stood, folding the letter carefully. If this works, if we expose the Wades, they'll come after both of us with everything they have. I know. I've been waiting 3 years for a chance to finish what I started. You just gave it to me. They shook hands, and Aaron headed for the door. He was halfway out when Webb called after him. Cole, your father, James Cole? Aaron turned. You knew him? Met him once. He stopped here on his way through, bought me dinner, listened to me complain about corruption in the territory. Said something I never forgot. Webb smiled faintly. He said, the world's full of men who know what's right but won't do it because it's inconvenient. The world changes when ordinary people decide their convenience matters less than their conscience. Sounds like his son inherited that particular affliction. Aaron didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and left. The ride back south felt longer than the journey north, every mile weighted with urgency and doubt. Aaron pushed the horse hard, but not to breaking, stopping only when necessary. His mind churned with everything that could go wrong. The Wades finding Rachel before he got back, Margaret Chen's sons unable to protect them, Rachel refusing to testify because the risk was too great. He tried not to think about what would happen if this failed. Tried not to imagine spending the rest of his life running, looking over his shoulder, knowing he'd left Rachel and Ivy to face the Wades alone. Night fell on the second day as Aaron crossed the last ridge before home. Below, his ranch spread out in the darkness, a single lamp burning in the window. His chest tightened at the sight. They were still there, still safe. He rode down slowly, every sense alert for ambush. The yard was quiet. No strange horses, no signs of violence. But as he approached the house, a figure stepped out from behind the barn, rifle raised. That's far enough. Aaron recognized the voice, one of Margaret Chen's sons. It's Aaron Cole, I'm coming home. The rifle lowered. A young man emerged from the shadows, maybe 25, with his mother's sharp eyes and steady manner. About time. Your women have been worried sick. Any trouble? Wade riders came by yesterday, 6 of them. Told them Mrs. Moore wasn't receiving visitors. They didn't like it much, but they rode off. My brothers are posted at the ridge in the North Pass. Anyone tries to come at this place, we'll see them long before they arrive. I'm grateful. Tell your mother. Tell her yourself when this is done. Right now, you better get inside. Mrs. Moore's been asking for you every hour since you left. Aaron dismounted and walked to the house on legs that felt like wood. The door opened before he could knock. Rachel stood there, leaning on a crutch someone had fashioned from a tree branch and old leather. Her face was pale, her injured leg wrapped in fresh bandages, but her eyes were fierce and alert. You came back. I promised I would. She grabbed his shirt and pulled him inside, movements awkward but determined. The door closed behind them and suddenly she was against him, arms wrapped tight around his chest, face pressed to his shoulder. She was shaking. I thought they'd killed you. I thought... Her voice broke. Aaron's arms came up slowly, carefully, holding her like she might shatter. I'm here. I'm all right. You ran from the marshal. Margaret's son told me, said the whole territory's looking for you. I didn't have a choice. They were going to lock me up, buy the judge, make sure I hanged. I couldn't let that happen. Rachel pulled back enough to look at him. Tears streaked her face, but her jaw was set. What do we do now? We fight back, but I need your help. He explained about Marcus Webb, about the newspaper, about the chance to expose the Wades publicly. He pulled out Webb's letter and the blank statement paper. He needs your testimony, everything the Wades did to you, dates, details, everything you can remember. If you're willing to go on record, he'll print it. If enough people see it, if enough pressure builds, maybe we can force the territorial governor to investigate. Maybe we can actually beat them. Rachel took the papers with trembling hands. If I do this, the Wades will know. They'll come after us harder than before. I know. Ivy could get hurt. She could. But she could also grow up in a valley where people like the Wades don't get to terrorize families with no consequences, where the law means something, where her mother doesn't have to live in fear. Aaron caught her hand. I won't lie to you, Rachel. This is dangerous. But running is dangerous too. Hiding is dangerous. At least this way we're fighting for something. She looked down at the papers, then over to where Ivy slept peacefully in the bed, one small hand clutching a rag doll. Tell me what you need me to write. They worked through the night. Rachel sat at the table, Aaron beside her, as she recounted 2 years of systematic abuse, every visit from the Wade brothers, every threat, every payment extorted under the guise of debt collection. She wrote about Thomas showing up at her door claiming her dead husband owed gambling debts, about Cyrus putting his hands on her when she couldn't pay, about Emmett killing her chickens and laughing while Ivy cried. Her handwriting shook in places, the memories cutting deep, but she didn't stop, didn't soften it. She wrote the truth raw and complete. When she finished, Aaron read it twice. It was damning, specific, impossible to dismiss as confusion or exaggeration. If Webb printed this alongside Aaron's account and the other testimonies he'd collected, it would create a storm the Wades couldn't weather. This is good, Aaron said quietly. This is exactly what we need. Rachel signed her name at the bottom, the pen strokes firm despite her exhaustion. What happens now? I take this to Webb. He publishes it. Then we wait and see if truth matters more than money in this territory. And if it doesn't? Then we run. Take Ivy and go so far the Wades can never find us. Rachel reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were cold despite the warm night. I never thanked you properly for what you've done, what you're risking. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Most men would have turned Ivy away, told her it wasn't their problem. You didn't. You came after me even though you didn't know me. You stood between armed men and my daughter. You're fighting a battle that isn't yours. It is mine. Aaron's voice was rough. The moment Ivy showed up at my fence, it became mine. The moment I saw what the Wades did to you, it became mine. I'm not doing this because I'm noble, Rachel. I'm doing it because walking away would make me the kind of man I don't want to be. She studied his face in the lamplight. You're a good man, Aaron Cole. I'm an angry man who's finally found something worth being angry about. A sound from the bed, Ivy stirring, whimpering in her sleep. Rachel rose awkwardly, crutch scraping against the floor, and limped over to soothe her daughter. Aaron watched them together, mother and child finding comfort in each other, and felt something shift in his chest. This was what he was fighting for. Not justice in the abstract, Not some principle about right and wrong. This, the specific warmth of this moment, the knowledge that tomorrow morning Ivy would wake up safe and Rachel would still be here to hold her. Everything else was just details. Dawn came cold and gray. Aaron prepared for another ride north, checking his weapons, packing supplies. Margaret Chen's son appeared as he was saddling the horse. "Mother wants you to take this." He held out a pistol, old but well-maintained. "Says a man riding alone needs more than a rifle." Aaron took it. "Thank her for me, for everything." "Thank her by winning. That's all she wants." The ride to Ashford was faster this time, Aaron pushing hard now that he had what Webb needed. He arrived at midday, dust-covered and exhausted, and found the newspaper office buzzing with activity. Webb looked up from a printing press, hands black with ink. "You got it?" Aaron handed over Rachel's statement. Webb read it standing there, expression growing darker with each line. When he finished, he looked at Aaron with something like awe. "This woman is either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Both, probably. It's perfect. Specific enough to verify, detailed enough to be credible. Combined with what I already have in your account," Webb grinned fiercely. "This is going to hurt them. Badly. When can you print it?" "Tomorrow. I'll run 500 copies, distribute them through every town within 50 miles. By the end of the week, everyone in the territory will know what the Wades have been doing. They'll come after you. Let them try. I've been preparing for this fight for 3 years. I've got copies of everything hidden in 3 different locations. They burn down this office. The story still comes out. They kill me, my associate in Denver publishes it anyway. Thomas Wade thinks he can control information. He's about to learn otherwise." Webb set the statement on his desk like it was something precious. "There's one more thing we need, though. Witnesses. People willing to stand up in person and say the Wades hurt them. Written statements are good, but seeing actual people, hearing them speak, that's what really changes minds. Nobody will do it. They're too afraid. They were too afraid when they were alone. But you've shown them they're not alone anymore. Go back to Silver Creek. Talk to the families in those statements. Tell them we're publishing. Tell them now's their chance to speak up. Some will refuse, but some won't. We only need a few brave souls to start an avalanche." Aaron thought about it. Riding back to Silver Creek meant riding straight into Wade territory, straight into the teeth of danger. But Webb was right. Written words could be dismissed as lies. Living, breathing witnesses were harder to ignore. "I'll do it. Don't get yourself killed before the story breaks. That would be inconvenient." "I'll try to avoid it." Aaron left Ashford as the sun began its descent, heading south once more. The horse was tired but game, sensing perhaps the urgency that drove its rider. By evening, Aaron was back in familiar country. He avoided the main roads, sticking to game trails and hidden paths Margaret Chen had shown him. The first family on Webb's list lived in a small homestead east of Silver Creek, the Hutchins family, whose crops had been burned. He approached after dark, moving quietly, watching for Wade patrols. The farmhouse was dark except for one window. Aaron knocked softly. The door cracked open. A man's face appeared, hard and suspicious. "Who's there?" "My name is Aaron Cole. I need to talk to you about the Wades." The door started to close. Aaron jammed his boot in the gap. "Please, just 5 minutes. I know what they did to your crops. I know you filed a complaint that went nowhere. I'm trying to do something about it." "You're the one who shot Emmett Wade." It wasn't a question. "In self-defense." "He drew on me first, but yes." Hutchins looked at him for a long moment, then opened the door wider. "Come in, quickly." Inside, the house was spare and worn. A woman sat at the table, mending clothes by candlelight. 3 children slept in a loft overhead. Hutchins gestured for Aaron to sit. "You've got 5 minutes. Talk." Aaron told them about Webb's newspaper, about Rachel's testimony, about the chance to finally expose what the Wades had been doing. He pulled out the copy of Hutchins' old statement. "You wrote this 3 years ago. You told the truth about what happened. Now I'm asking you to tell it again, publicly, at a town meeting where people can hear you speak." "They'll kill me." Hutchins' voice was flat. "Maybe. Or maybe if enough of us stand together, they won't be able to. Maybe there's strength in numbers. Numbers didn't help when they burned my crops. Numbers didn't help when the sheriff told me there wasn't enough evidence to investigate. Numbers won't stop a bullet." His wife spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. "Tell him about Sarah." Hutchins' face darkened. That's got nothing to do with... Tell him. Hutchins looked away. My sister, Sarah Brennan. She's a widow, lives in Silver Creek. Cyrus Wade's been paying her attention. Unwanted attention. She's told him no a dozen times, but he keeps coming around. Last month, he told her if she didn't accept his courtship, he'd make sure her children suffered. I know, Aaron said. I saw her statement in Webb's files. Then you know she's terrified. Won't leave her house, won't let the children out of her sight. That's what the Wades do. They find your weakness and they press on it until you break. Hutchins met Aaron's eyes. I want to help you. I do. But I've got a family to protect. Standing up at some meeting, putting a target on my back, that's not protecting them. That's getting them killed. What if you're wrong? What if staying silent is what gets them killed? Because the Wades won't stop, Mr. Hutchins. They'll keep taking, keep hurting, keep pressing until there's nothing left. Maybe you can survive it. Maybe you can keep your head down long enough that they move on to easier targets. But your children? They'll grow up in a world where men like Thomas Wade own everything and everyone. Where justice is something you buy. Where fear is the only law that matters. Is that the world you want for them? The woman's hand found her husband's. He's right. We can't live like this forever. Hutchins was quiet for a long time. Then, when's this meeting? 3 days. Webb's publishing the story tomorrow. By the time people read it, they'll be ready to hear from witnesses. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Aaron left them to their discussion and moved on to the next family. The pattern repeated. Initial fear, reluctance, the slow dawning understanding that silence hadn't protected them so far and wouldn't protect them in the future. Some refused outright, but others, like Hutchins, said they'd consider it. By the time Aaron finished making his rounds, he had commitments from 4 families. Not many, but enough. Enough to show the Wades didn't control everyone. Enough to give other victims courage to speak. He was riding back toward his ranch when he saw the smoke. Black and thick, rising against the dawn sky from the direction of his property. Aaron's heart dropped into his stomach. He dug his heels in and the horse surged forward, racing across open ground, jumping gullies, crashing through brush. Please no. Please not Rachel. Please not Ivy. He topped the last ridge and saw his ranch burning. The barn was already gone, collapsed into flames and embers. The house was engulfed, fire pouring from the windows, the roof beginning to sag. And in the yard, silhouetted against the inferno, stood Cyrus Wade and half a dozen men. Aaron didn't think, didn't plan, just charged down the slope with murder in his heart. The rifle came up. His first shot took one of Wade's men clean out of the saddle. The second shot shattered another man's shoulder. Then he was among them, the horse scattering riders, Aaron swinging the rifle like a club. Someone grabbed his leg. Aaron kicked free, spun the horse. A pistol barked, and he felt heat sear across his ribs. He ignored it, fired point blank into the nearest threat, worked the bolt, fired again. Where are they? He roared at Cyrus. Where's Rachel? Where's Ivy? Cyrus smiled through split lips. Gone. Taken care of. You should have stayed away, Cole. Red filled Aaron's vision. He threw himself from the saddle, tackling Cyrus to the ground. They rolled through dirt and ash, fists flying. Aaron felt bones break under his knuckles, Cyrus's or his own, he couldn't tell. Then someone hit him from behind and the world exploded into stars. He woke to pain and the smell of smoke. Aaron was on his back, hands tied, surrounded by Wade men. Cyrus stood over him, face bloody, pistol in hand. You cost me everything, Cyrus said. My reputation, my brother's hand, my uncle's patience. You turned people against us with your lies and that bitch's testimony. Where are they? The woman and brat? Probably halfway to hell by now. We sent some boys to finish what you started. Can't have witnesses running around contradicting our story. Something broke in Aaron then. Some last restraint that had been holding him together. He surged up despite the ropes, despite the pain, headbutting Cyrus hard enough to send them both sprawling. Gunfire erupted around them, but not from the Wade men. Riders poured over the ridge, Margaret Chen and her sons, Hutchins, and his neighbors. Other families Aaron had visited. People who'd decided silence was more dangerous than speaking up. They came with rifles and fury, and 3 years of accumulated fear turned into action. The Wade men broke and ran. Cyrus tried to follow, but Aaron tackled him again, dragging him down. They fought in the dirt until Margaret Chen's oldest son pulled them apart. Enough, Margaret said. He's not worth killing. Aaron stood, chest heaving, looking at his burning home, everything he owned turning to ash and smoke. Rachel, he gasped. Ivy, he said. They're safe. Margaret pointed to a wagon at the edge of the property. My sons got them out before the fire spread. They're scared, but alive. Aaron ran. Rachel sat in the wagon, Ivy clutched in her arms, both of them covered in soot. When Ivy saw him, she burst into tears and reached out. Aaron gathered them both close, feeling them solid and real and breathing. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered into Rachel's hair. We're here. We're all right. But her voice shook and Aaron could feel her trembling. Behind them, Margaret's sons were tying up Cyrus Wade. The other Wade riders had scattered into the hills, leaderless and broken. Dawn broke over the burning ranch, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. Aaron held Rachel and Ivy and watched his home collapse into coals and knew that everything had changed. The morning after the fire, Aaron stood in what used to be his home and tried to salvage anything worth keeping. There wasn't much. The heat had been so intense that metal had warped and glass had melted. His father's tools were slag. His mother's quilts were ash. 3 generations of coal history reduced to charcoal and memory. Rachel limped over, leaning heavily on her crutch. Ivy walked beside her, one small hand gripping her mother's skirt. The girl hadn't let go since they'd pulled her from the burning house. We should go, Rachel said quietly, before they come back. They won't come back, not yet. Aaron gestured to where Margaret Chen's sons kept watch at the ridge. And when they do, they'll find a fight waiting. Aaron, look at this place. There's nothing left to fight for. He turned to face her. There's everything to fight for. This is my land. My father's land. I'm not giving it up because some coward with a match thinks he can scare me off. It's not about being scared off. It's about being smart. We can go somewhere the Wades can't reach us, start over, build something new. And what happens to everyone else? Hutchins and his family? Sarah Brennan and her children? All the people who found courage because we stood up first? We run now. We tell them they were wrong to trust us. We tell them silence was the right choice all along. Rachel's eyes flashed. Don't you dare put that on me. Don't make this about honor or duty or whatever it is men tell themselves when they're about to do something stupid. I've lost enough, Aaron. Thomas lost everything standing on principle, and where did it get him? Dead in the dirt with a widow and child to carry on alone. I won't lose you too. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Ivy tugged on Rachel's skirt. Mama, don't fight. Rachel's expression crumbled. She pulled Ivy close. We're not fighting, baby. We're just trying to figure out what comes next. Aaron crouched down so he was eye level with Ivy. You remember what I promised you when you came to my fence looking for your mama? Ivy nodded. You said you'd bring her home. That's right. And I did. Now I'm making you another promise. I'm going to make sure the men who hurt you and your mama can't hurt anyone ever again. But I need you both to be brave a little longer. Can you do that? Ivy looked at her mother, then back at Aaron. Will it be scary? Probably. But you'll have me and your mama. And sometimes scary things are worth doing if they make the world better after. Okay, Ivy whispered. I'll be brave. Rachel's hand found Aaron's shoulder. You're asking too much of her, of both of us. I know, but I'm asking anyway. A rider appeared at the ridge, one of Margaret's sons, waving urgently. Aaron stood and walked over, Rachel following more slowly. Someone's coming, the young man said. Lots of someones. From the south. Aaron's hand went to his rifle. Wade men? Don't think so. No weapons visible. Looks like families. Wagons. Maybe 20 people? They watched as the group approached. Aaron recognized Hutchins driving the lead wagon, his wife beside him, children in the back. Behind them came other families from Aaron's visits, the Brennans, the Kowalskis, the Martins, all people who'd been hurt by the Wades, all people who'd been afraid to speak up. Hutchins pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down. He looked at the burned ruins, then at Aaron. Heard about the fire. Figured you might need help rebuilding. Aaron stared at him. You came to help me? We came to help each other. Hutchins gestured to the families gathering behind him. Webb's newspaper came out this morning. Everyone in 3 counties is reading it right now. Your story, Rachel's testimony, all of it laid out plain as day. He pulled a folded paper from his coat and handed it to Aaron. The headline screamed across the top, "Terror in the Valley, How the Wade Family Built an Empire on Fear." Below it, Rachel's statement was printed in full. Beside it, Aaron's account of the confrontation, and surrounding both, excerpts from a dozen other testimonies, all painting the same picture of systematic abuse and corruption. Aaron looked up from the paper to find everyone watching him. "The whole territory's talking about it," Sarah Brennan said. She was younger than Aaron expected, maybe 30, with tired eyes and calloused hands. "I walked into the general store this morning, and people were passing copies around, reading it out loud. Some were angry, some were crying, but everyone was paying attention. Thomas Wade's already sent riders to every newspaper office within 100 miles, another man added, trying to buy up all the copies, trying to silence it. But it's too late. The story's out. People know." "Knowing and acting are different things," Aaron said carefully. "The Wades still have power, money, influence." "They do," Hutchins agreed. "But they don't have everyone anymore. Some of us are tired of being afraid." He looked around at the gathered families. "We talked it over. All of us. Decided if you're willing to stand up in public and accuse the Wades, we'll stand with you. We'll testify. Tell our stories where everyone can hear. It's time someone did." Rachel moved up beside Aaron. "You understand what you're risking? The Wades burned our home. They'll do worse to you if they get the chance." "They already did worse to us," Sarah Brennan said quietly. "They just did it slow enough that we learned to live with it. I'm done living like that. My children deserve better." Ivy peered out from behind Rachel's skirt, looking at all the people, the wagons, the determined faces. "Are they here to help us?" "Yes, baby," Rachel said. "They are." Over the next 3 days, something remarkable happened. The families camped on Aaron's property and began rebuilding. Not just the house and barn, but something larger. A community, a solidarity that had been missing from the valley for years. Men who'd barely spoken to each other before worked side by side raising walls. Women who'd been strangers shared food and stories. Children played together in the dust, laughing in a way that suggested they'd forgotten what safety felt like. Aaron worked alongside them, hammer in hand, watching his home rise from the ashes. It wouldn't be the same as before. Couldn't be, after everything that had happened. But maybe that was for the best. The old house had been built for solitude. This new one was being built for something else entirely. Rachel couldn't do heavy work with her broken leg, so she organized supplies, kept track of materials, made sure everyone had water and food. Ivy appointed herself assistant, carrying messages between work crews with the seriousness of a child given important responsibility. On the afternoon of the third day, Margaret Chen rode in with news. Town meeting set for tomorrow evening in Silver Creek. Webb's arranged it. He's calling for a public inquiry into Wade business practices. Marshal Vance has agreed to moderate. Reluctantly, but he agreed. "Vance is bought," Aaron said. "This'll be a show trial, nothing more." "Maybe. But it'll be a show trial with witnesses, with testimony. With 100 people watching, that makes it harder to bury." Margaret's expression was fierce. "The territorial governor's office has already sent someone to observe. Webb's articles reached Denver. People in high places are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. The Wades will shut it down. They'll try. That's why we need everyone who's willing to speak to show up. Strength in numbers, remember?" That night, the families gathered around a large fire built in the cleared space where Aaron's barn used to stand. Children were put to bed in the wagons. Adults sat in a loose circle, faces illuminated by flickering firelight. Hutchins spoke first. "We all know what tomorrow means. We stand up in public, accuse the Wades, there's no going back. They'll come after us. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually. We need to be clear about what we're signing up for." "I'm clear," Sarah Brennan said. "Cyrus Wade threatened my children, told me he'd hurt them if I didn't accept his attention. I've been living in terror for 8 months. Tomorrow I'm going to stand up and tell everyone what he did. Let him threaten me in front of witnesses. Let him try." "They killed my livestock," an older man named Martin said. "Claimed it was disease, but I saw the knife wounds. Saw the poison they'd used. Lost 40 head of cattle. Nearly bankrupted me. Tomorrow I'm saying it out loud where everyone can hear." One by one, they went around the circle, each person sharing what the Wades had done, each person committing to speak the truth publicly. By the time they finished, Aaron counted 11 families willing to testify, 11 different stories of abuse, extortion, and violence. Rachel was the last to speak. She'd been quiet all evening, staring into the fire, Ivy asleep in her lap. "I don't want to do this," she said finally. "I want to take my daughter and disappear, find somewhere safe and quiet and never think about the Wades again." She looked up, eyes reflecting firelight. "But I keep thinking about Thomas, my husband. He was a good man, but he was passive. Let people push him around, borrowed money he couldn't pay back because he was too proud to ask for help, but too weak to say no to bad deals. He died because he wasn't paying attention, because he was rushing, because he'd learned to live with fear instead of confronting it." She touched Ivy's hair gently. "I don't want that for her. I don't want her to grow up learning that the right response to bullies is to hide. So tomorrow, I'm going to stand up and tell everyone what Cyrus and Emmett Wade did to me. What their uncle allowed. What the law ignored. And maybe it changes nothing. Maybe the Wades still win. But at least Ivy will know her mother tried." Aaron reached over and took Rachel's free hand. She squeezed back hard enough that it hurt. The next morning, they prepared for the ride to Silver Creek. The families loaded into wagons, bringing their children, their neighbors, anyone willing to witness what was about to happen. Margaret Chen's sons rode as escorts, rifles visible, making it clear this wasn't a group to be trifled with. Aaron helped Rachel into a wagon, then lifted Ivy up beside her. The girl had been quiet all morning, sensing the tension in the adults around her. "Are the bad men going to be there?" Ivy asked. "Probably," Aaron said honestly. "Will they hurt Mama again?" "Not while I'm breathing." Ivy considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, I'll help protect her too." The ride to Silver Creek took most of the morning. As they approached the town, Aaron saw that the streets were packed. Word had spread. People had come from all over the territory, some to support the accusers, some to defend the Wades, most just curious to see what would happen when victims finally spoke up. The town hall was a simple wooden building with a large meeting room. Marshal Vance stood at the door, looking uncomfortable in his official capacity. When he saw Aaron, something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or regret. "Quite a crowd you've brought. These are witnesses, people with testimony to give. Some of them are children. Children who've been hurt by Wade actions. They have a right to speak." Vance nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but Cole, I need your word there'll be no violence. This is a legal proceeding. We do this proper or we don't do it at all. As long as the Wades follow the same rules." "They will. I've made that clear." Inside, the hall was already filled to capacity. Thomas Wade sat in the front row, flanked by lawyers. Cyrus was there too, face still bruised from their fight, eyes burning with hatred. Emmett sat beside his brother, his mangled hand wrapped in fresh bandages. The families filed in and took seats on the opposite side. The symbolism wasn't subtle. The room literally divided between Wade supporters and their victims. A man in a dark suit stood at the front. The territorial observer Margaret had mentioned. He had the look of someone who'd seen too much corruption to be shocked by more, but still held on to enough idealism to care. "My name is James Harker," he announced. "I'm here representing the Territorial Governor's Office to observe these proceedings and report back on their conduct. Marshal Vance will moderate. Both sides will have opportunity to present evidence and testimony. We'll proceed in an orderly fashion or we won't proceed at all. Is that clear?" Murmurs of agreement from both sides. Vance stood. "We'll start with the accusations. Mr. Cole, you've made serious claims against the Wade family. You have the floor." Aaron stood, aware of every eye in the room on him. He pulled out the newspaper article, the one Webb had published with Rachel's testimony and the other statements. "Everything I need to say is in here. The Wades have been running a protection racket in this valley for years. They threaten families, destroy property, extort money under false pretenses. When people resist, they use violence. When people complain to the law, the Wades use their influence to make those complaints disappear. I've witnessed it personally. So have the 11 families here with me today." Thomas Wade's lawyer stood smoothly. "Accusations without evidence, hearsay and slander designed to damage my client's reputation." "Then let's provide evidence," Aaron said. "Let's hear from the victims. Let them tell their stories under oath where everyone can hear." "This isn't a court of law," the lawyer protested. "No," Harker said quietly, "but it is an official inquiry, and I'm authorized to take sworn testimony. If these people are willing to speak under oath, they'll be heard." The lawyer sat down, face tight. One by one, the families stood and testified. Hutchins described his burned crops, the threats from Cyrus Wade, The complete lack of response from local law enforcement. Sarah Brennan, voice shaking but clear, detailed Cyrus's unwanted advances, his threats against her children, the terror she'd lived with for months. Others followed, each story different in specifics, but the same in essence. The Wades took what they wanted, hurt anyone who resisted, and operated with impunity because money and connections insulated them from consequences. Through it all, Thomas Wade sat motionless, face unreadable. But Cyrus grew more agitated with each testimony. His hand kept moving to where his pistol would normally be, finding empty air, fingers curling in frustration. Finally, Rachel stood. The room went silent. Everyone had read her testimony in the newspaper. Now they would hear it spoken aloud. Rachel limped to the front, refusing help, leaning on her crutch. She faced the room with her chin up and her eyes hard. "My name is Rachel Moore. 2 years ago, my husband died in an accident. 6 months ago, Cyrus and Emmett Wade came to my home claiming Thomas owed them money from gambling. My husband never gambled, never borrowed money from them or anyone, but they insisted. They demanded payment." Her voice stayed steady, factual. "When I said I couldn't pay a debt that didn't exist, they started coming back. Once a week, then twice. They'd look around my property, comment on how accidents happen, how dangerous it is for a woman and child living alone, how it would be terrible if something happened to us." Cyrus stood up. "That's a lie." "Sit down, Mr. Wade," Harker said sharply. "I won't sit here and listen to this bitch." Marshal Vance was on his feet. "That's enough. You'll sit down and keep quiet, or you'll be removed from this hall." Cyrus sat, but his eyes promised violence. Rachel continued, "They killed my chickens. All of them. Wrung their necks and left them in my yard. They burned my vegetable garden, the only food I had to feed my daughter. They told me if I didn't pay, they'd take Ivy. They said no one would believe a poor widow over the Wade family." Her voice finally broke. "They were right. When I went to the sheriff, he told me there wasn't enough evidence. When I tried to leave the valley, they found out and told me if I ran, they'd hunt us down. So I stayed, and I paid. Everything I had. Every penny I could scrape together. Not because I owed them, but because I was afraid of what they'd do to my daughter if I didn't." She looked directly at Thomas Wade. "You knew. Your nephews reported to you, brought you the money they extorted. You're as guilty as they are. More, because you had the power to stop it, and chose not to." Thomas Wade finally spoke, his voice cold and measured. "You have no proof of any of this. No witnesses, no documentation, just the word of a desperate woman who owes my family money." "I have proof," Rachel said. She pulled a small notebook from her pocket. "Every payment I made, date, amount, what they threatened if I didn't pay. 2 years of records, and I'm not the only one who kept track. Other families pulled out similar records. Ledgers, notes, receipts for payments made under duress. Together they painted a picture of systematic extortion spanning years. The lawyer tried to argue, tried to discredit the evidence, but it was too much. Too many people, too many stories, too much documentation that corroborated each testimony." Harker stood. "I've heard enough. Marshal Vance, I'm recommending immediate arrest of Cyrus Wade and Emmett Wade on charges of extortion, assault, and criminal threatening. I'm also recommending a full investigation into Thomas Wade's business practices and his potential involvement in these crimes." "You can't do this!" Thomas Wade was on his feet now, his composure cracking. "Do you know who I am, what I own? One telegram, and I'll have your job." "Try it," Harker said calmly. "The territorial governor is tired of complaints about corruption in this region. He sent me here specifically to find out if the rumors were true. Turns out they were understated. You're done, Mr. Wade. In this valley and everywhere else, your influence reaches." Cyrus exploded out of his chair, shoving past his uncle, heading straight for Rachel. "You bitch! You've destroyed everything!" Aaron intercepted him, catching Cyrus's arm mid-swing. They grappled, crashing into chairs. People screamed. Emmett joined the fight, his good hand reaching for Aaron's throat. Then Margaret Chen's sons were there, pulling the Wade brothers back. Marshal Vance and his deputies finally moved, slapping irons on both Cyrus and Emmett. "Enough!" Vance roared. "This hearing is over. The Wade brothers are under arrest. Mr. Thomas Wade, you're to remain in Silver Creek pending investigation. Anyone interferes with these arrests will join them in jail." As the Wade brothers were dragged away, still shouting threats, Aaron helped Rachel back to her seat. She was shaking, face pale, but her eyes were bright with something that looked like relief. "It's over," she whispered. It's really over. Not quite, Aaron said. But it started. The ending, anyway. The crowd slowly dispersed, people filing out into the late afternoon sun. Some stayed to congratulate the families who testified. Others left quietly, processing what they'd witnessed. The balance of power in the valley had shifted in the space of a few hours. Thomas Wade left with his lawyers, silent and stone-faced, but his eyes promised this wasn't finished. Aaron didn't care. Let him promise. Let him plot. The truth was out now. The witnesses had spoken. Whatever came next, it would happen in the light instead of the shadows. The days that followed were strange and quiet. The families returned to their homes. Aaron continued rebuilding his ranch with help from neighbors who appeared without being asked. The house took shape, smaller than before but sturdier, built with fresh timber and new purpose. Rachel and Ivy stayed, not because they had nowhere else to go, but because Aaron asked them to. Because the ranch felt wrong without them. Because somewhere in the chaos and fear and fighting, they'd become something more than temporary refugees in his home. 2 weeks after the hearing, Marshal Vance rode out to the ranch. Aaron met him in the yard, hammer still in hand, suspicious. "Relax, Cole. I'm not here to arrest you." "Then why are you here?" Vance dismounted and pulled an envelope from his coat. "Official pardon from the territorial governor. All charges dropped. Turns out when they actually investigated, they found your version of events was accurate. Cyrus Wade confirmed it himself, bragged about it actually, trying to impress his cellmate. Didn't realize the cellmate was reporting back to Harker." Aaron took the envelope, but didn't open it. "What about the Wade brothers?" "Awaiting trial. Thomas Wade's been stripped of most of his business licenses pending investigation. Turns out once people started talking, a lot of his enterprises were found to be operating outside the law. He's probably looking at prison time. His nephews definitely are." "And you?" Vance's face hardened. "What about me?" "You knew what they were doing. All those complaints that went nowhere, that was you ignoring them." "Yeah, it was." Vance looked away. "I'm not proud of it, but I've got a family to feed, and the Wades paid well for looking the other way. I told myself it wasn't my place to make waves, that I was just one man against a powerful family. Turns out those are the excuses cowards use when they don't want to admit they sold their integrity for a quiet life. So what now? Now I do better. Actually investigate complaints. Actually hold people accountable regardless of how much money they have." He met Aaron's eyes. "I know that doesn't fix what I let happen, but it's all I've got to offer." Aaron studied him for a long moment. "Everyone gets one chance to be better. Don't waste it." "I won't." After Vance left, Aaron returned to the house where Rachel was teaching Ivy to read using an old primer someone had donated. The girl was bright, picking up letters quickly, sounding out words with determined concentration. Rachel looked up when Aaron entered. "Everything all right?" "Everything's fine. Charges are dropped. I'm officially not a fugitive anymore." "That's good news." But her expression was cautious. "So what happens now?" It was the question Aaron had been avoiding. Now that the danger had passed, now that the Wades were dealt with, Rachel and Ivy had no reason to stay. They could return to their cabin, rebuild their own lives, move on from this chapter. "I don't know," he said honestly. "What do you want to happen?" Rachel set down the primer carefully. "Ivy, go wash up for supper." "But Mama—" "Now, baby." Ivy obeyed reluctantly, sensing adult conversation that didn't include her. When she was gone, Rachel stood and faced Aaron. "I've been thinking about that question a lot. What I want. What's best for Ivy. What makes sense. And? The smart thing would be to leave. Go back east where I have family. Give Ivy a chance at a normal life in a place where people don't know her as the poor widow's daughter." Aaron's chest tightened, but he nodded. "That would be smart." "But I don't want to be smart." Rachel moved closer. "I want to stay, here, with you, if you'll have us." "Rachel, I know it's complicated. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know this probably seems sudden or improper or whatever people will say, but Aaron, you stood between armed men and my daughter. You risked everything to help us when you had no reason to. You kept your promises when breaking them would have been easier. That matters. That means something." Aaron caught her hands. "You don't owe me anything. You and Ivy staying out of obligation or gratitude, that's not what this is." Rachel's voice was firm. "This is me choosing, not because I'm afraid or grateful or have no other options, Because I want to build something here. With you. A home. A life. A future that's ours instead of something we're running from. What about Ivy? She adores you, asks about you constantly. Told me yesterday that when she grows up, she wants to marry someone just like Mr. Aaron, who keeps his promises. Aaron felt his throat tighten. I'm not good at this. I've been alone a long time. I don't know how to be whatever it is you need. I need you to be honest, to be kind, to keep being the man who heard a child calling for help and didn't look away. Can you do that? Yes. Then that's enough. The rest we'll figure out together. They stood close, hands clasped, something fragile and precious building between them. Outside, Ivy's laughter carried on the evening air as she played with a kitten someone had brought from town. So we're doing this? Aaron asked. We're doing this. People will talk. Let them. Won't be easy, building a life from scratch. Nothing worth doing ever is. Aaron pulled her close, and Rachel came willingly, fitting against him like she belonged there. He breathed in the smell of her hair, sage and smoke, and something sweetly her own. I never thought I'd have this, he said quietly. A family. People depending on me. It's terrifying. Good. Means you'll try hard not to mess it up. He laughed despite himself. That's your plan? Motivate through fear? Whatever works. The summer faded into autumn. The ranch took shape. Not grand, not fancy, but solid and real. Aaron worked the land with Rachel beside him, teaching Ivy about crops and seasons and the hard work of building something lasting. Other families who'd testified at the hearing started stopping by. Hutchins and his sons helped with the harvest. Sarah Brennan brought preserves and stayed for supper, her children playing with Ivy like cousins. Margaret Chen rode over once a week to check on their progress and share news from the valley. The Wades faded from daily concern. Cyrus and Emmett were convicted and sent to the territorial prison. Thomas Wade lost his businesses, his influence, his power. He left the territory a broken man, though rumors said he was trying to rebuild his empire somewhere else. Aaron didn't care. Whatever Thomas Wade was doing, it was happening far from here. By the time the first snow fell, the house was finished. Aaron stood on the new porch, watching Ivy build a snowman with fierce concentration, while Rachel laughed at her daughter's determination. She's got your stubbornness, Aaron called. And your inability to quit when the smart move is to give up, Rachel shot back. He couldn't argue with that. That night, after Ivy was asleep in her new room, Aaron and Rachel sat by the fire. She was mending a shirt. He was oiling harness leather, domestic, ordinary, perfect. I never thanked you properly, Rachel said quietly. For what? For giving us a home. A real one. Not just a roof and walls, but a place where we belong. You gave me the same thing. I just didn't know I needed it until you showed up. She set down her mending and moved to sit beside him. I love you, Aaron Cole. I probably shouldn't say it this soon. Probably should wait for some proper courtship or whatever's considered appropriate. But I'm done waiting for my life to start. I'm done being afraid of saying what I feel. Aaron set aside the leather and pulled her close. I love you too. Have since the moment you looked at me with that broken leg and told me you wouldn't take charity. Knew right then you were someone worth keeping. That's what won you over? Me being stubborn and prideful? That's what told me you were strong enough to survive anything, strong enough to build a life with. They sat together in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, snow falling soft outside, building the kind of peace that only comes from surviving hell and choosing to build heaven in its place. 3 years later, Aaron stood in the same spot, older, scarred, but content. The ranch had prospered. The herd had grown. The land gave what it could, and they asked no more. Rachel was pregnant with their second child, due in spring. Ivy, now 9, was teaching the Chen children how to ride, her laughter carrying across the valley like music. Marshal Vance had kept his word, bringing honest law enforcement to the region. New families had moved in, drawn by stories of a community that had stood up to corruption and won. The valley was growing, changing, becoming something better than it had been. Sometimes Aaron thought about those desperate days when everything hung in the balance, when violence seemed inevitable and justice felt impossible. He thought about the choice to help a little girl standing at his fence, how easily he could have turned her away, how different everything would be if he had. But he hadn't. He'd made a promise and kept it. And that single choice had changed everything. Rachel joined him on the porch, her hand finding his. What are you thinking about? How we got here. All the things that had to happen exactly right for this to work out. You mean all the things that went terribly wrong that we survived anyway? That too. Ivy ran up, breathless and excited. Papa, Mama, can we have a barn dance? Mrs. Chen said she'd bring musicians and everyone could come. Aaron looked at Rachel. She shrugged, smiling. Why not? We've got a barn now. Might as well use it. Yes! Ivy hugged them both and ran off to spread the news. Papa, Rachel said softly. She called you Papa. I noticed. How do you feel about that? Aaron thought about it, about the weight of that word, the responsibility, the promise it represented. I feel like the luckiest man in the territory. Rachel kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. Good answer. The barn dance happened 2 weeks later. Half the valley showed up, music filled the night. Children ran wild while adults danced and laughed and celebrated being alive in a place where they no longer had to be afraid. Aaron danced with Rachel, holding her carefully because of the baby. Then he danced with Ivy, who stood on his boots and let him guide her through the steps. She was getting too big for that, growing faster than he'd like, but she was happy, safe, loved. That was enough. That was everything. As the evening wore on and the stars came out bright and cold, Aaron looked around at the faces illuminated by lantern light. These people, his neighbors, his friends, his family, they'd all been broken by the Wades in different ways, but they'd found each other in the breaking, built something stronger from the pieces. The world was still hard, still unforgiving, still full of men who took what they wanted and hurt whoever got in their way. But the world also had people like Rachel, who kept fighting even when fighting seemed hopeless. Like Ivy, who stayed brave when everything was terrifying. Like Margaret Chen and Hutchins and Sarah Brennan and all the others who'd found courage they didn't know they had. The world had people who kept their promises, who stood up when it mattered, who chose the hard right over the easy wrong. Aaron was proud to be counted among them. The music swelled. Rachel laughed at something Margaret said. Ivy chased fireflies with the other children, her joy pure and uncomplicated. And Aaron Cole, who'd started that burning summer alone on a failing ranch with nothing but memories and regret, stood surrounded by everything he'd never dared hope for. Family, community, purpose, home. He'd made a promise to a little girl standing at his fence, and keeping that promise had given him back his life. Sometimes that's how the world worked. Sometimes doing the right thing cost everything. And sometimes, if you were lucky, it gave you everything back tenfold. The music played on into the night, and the valley, once silent with fear, rang with laughter and hope, and the sound of people who'd learned that together they were stronger than anything that tried to break them.